You walk into your kitchen, reach for the refrigerator door, and then suddenly you stop. You just stand there because you can't remember why you came. For a moment, you try to brush it off. You look around, hoping something will trigger your memory. The cold air from the fridge touches your face. The quiet hum fills the space. Somewhere in the house, the TV is on. You can hear distant sounds, maybe the clinking of dishes or footsteps. But the answer doesn't come back. And here's something most people don't realize. Moments like this may not be as harmless as they seem. In fact, many doctors are now warning that these small lapses could be early signs of changes happening inside the brain, changes that don't come with pain, don't come with a clear warning, and often go unnoticed for years. For many women over 65, these moments are becoming more frequent. You forget why you walked into a room, you lose your train of thought in the middle of a sentence, you struggle to find a word that used to come easily. At first, it feels minor, almost normal. But deep down something feels different. And that quiet feeling can be hard to ignore. Because what if it's not just aging? What if it's something happening slowly, silently, underneath the surface? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn may completely change the way you understand these moments. In the next few minutes, you'll discover what science is beginning to uncover about memory loss, what may actually be causing it, and why so many women are experiencing these changes without realizing what's really behind them. You'll also see how small, simple shifts, the kind most people overlook, can play a powerful role in supporting your brain and helping you stay sharp, present, and connected to the people and memories you love. And perhaps most importantly, you'll begin to understand why these changes may not be as inevitable as you've always been told. Because for a long time, many people believed that forgetfulness was just a natural part of getting older, something you simply had to accept. But that belief is starting to change. More and more research is showing that the brain is not as fixed as we once thought. Even later in life, it continues to adapt, respond, and rebuild in ways that can either support or weaken memory over time. And the difference often comes down to things most people are never taught, which is why so many women go through these experiences alone without truly understanding what's happening inside their own minds. If you've ever stood in your kitchen wondering what you came for, if you've ever paused mid-conversation searching for a word that just won't come, if you've ever laughed it off in the moment but later felt a quiet sense of concern, you're not imagining it, and you're definitely not alone. These are some of the most common early experiences women talk about, but rarely talk about openly, because there's often a deeper fear underneath, a fear that's hard to put into words. The fear of losing something that feels essential to who you are, your memory, your clarity, your sense of connection to the people and moments that matter most. And while these moments may seem small on the surface, they can carry a weight that's much bigger than they appear. That's why understanding what's happening and what you can do about it is so important, because once you begin to see the bigger picture, these moments stop being random and start becoming signals. Signals that your brain may be asking for support in ways you've never considered before. If you've experienced moments like these, you know they don't just pass unnoticed. Even when you try to ignore them, they tend to linger. You might be in the middle of a conversation and suddenly lose your train of thought. For a brief second, everything goes blank. The person in front of you is waiting, and you feel that small wave of panic rise inside your chest. So you smile, you pause, and you try to recover. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And later, when you're alone, that moment comes back to you. You start wondering, why did that happen? Is this normal, or is something changing? At first, it may only happen occasionally. You open the pantry and forget what you needed. You misplace your keys. You walk into a room and lose your purpose. Small things, easy to dismiss. But over time, something begins to shift. It's not just the forgetfulness anymore, it's how it makes you feel. There's a subtle loss of confidence. You might double-check things more often, rely on notes, reminders, or routines to stay on track, take a little longer before speaking just to be sure. And in social situations, things can feel different too. You may hesitate before joining conversations, worrying that you might forget a word, or repeat something you already said, or lose your place in the middle of a story. So sometimes, without even realizing it, you begin to pull back, not completely, just a little. Skipping a gathering here, staying quieter there, telling yourself you're just tired or not in the mood. But underneath, there's something else, a quiet concern that's growing over time. Because memory isn't just about remembering things. It's about identity. It's about knowing who you are through your experiences, your stories, and your relationships. And when memory feels less reliable, it can shake something deeper. You may start thinking about your independence, being able to drive where you want, manage your finances, live your life on your own terms. The idea of losing that, even slowly, can feel overwhelming. And many women carry that fear silently. They don't always talk about it. They adapt, they adjust, they compensate, but the uncertainty remains. And here's what makes this even more important. According to the Alzheimer's Association, nearly 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's are women, and after the age of 65, the risk increases significantly. But what many people don't realize is this. These changes don't suddenly appear one day. They often begin years earlier, quietly, subtly, in ways that are easy to overlook. A missed word here, a forgotten detail there, a moment of confusion that passes quickly. And because these signs can seem small, they're often dismissed. People tell themselves it's just part of getting older, it happens to everyone. And while some level of forgetfulness can be normal, not all memory changes are the same. Some are signals that something deeper may be happening inside the brain. And when those signals are ignored, the effects don't just stay the same, they can grow. At first, it may be a few misplaced items or forgotten appointments, but over time these moments can begin to stack up. You might find yourself relying more on routines just to feel secure. Friends may start checking in more often. Family members may begin to notice changes, even if they don't say anything directly. And that can create a new kind of tension, not just internally, but in your relationships too. You might sense concern in the way people speak to you or in the questions they ask, and that can make you feel even more aware of every small mistake, which leads to more self-doubt, more hesitation, and sometimes more withdrawal. What many people don't realize is that this cycle, the combination of memory lapses, worry, and reduced confidence, can actually make things worse over time. Because the brain doesn't just respond to biology, it also responds to experience, to stress, to isolation, and to how often it's being engaged, challenged, and supported. And when confidence starts to fade, those opportunities can shrink. Activities you once enjoyed, like reading, socializing, or learning new things, may start to feel more effortful, less automatic, and gradually, without realizing it, the world becomes a little smaller. That's why understanding what's happening early on is so important, because these early moments, as small as they seem, can be turning points, not just warnings, but opportunities. Opportunities to recognize what your brain may need and to begin supporting it in ways that can make a real difference over time. So, what's actually happening inside the brain during these moments? Let's look at this in a simple, clear way. Imagine your brain like a busy city. Every thought, every memory, every word you speak travels through a network of connections, like roads carrying information from one place to another. When everything is working well, those signals move quickly and smoothly. You remember names, you recall stories, you stay present in conversations. But over time, certain changes can begin to affect how smoothly that system works. One of those changes involves tiny protein fragments that naturally form in the brain. In a healthy system, your brain is able to clear them away, but as the years go by, these fragments can start to accumulate. Think of it like small bits of debris slowly building up along the roads of a city. At first, it doesn't cause much disruption, but gradually it begins to slow things down. Signals don't travel as efficiently, and that's when memory can start to feel less reliable. You might know something, but it takes longer to access it, or it feels just out of reach. Now there's another factor that plays a major role, and that's stress. When you feel worried, anxious, or under pressure, your body releases a hormone called cortisol. In small amounts, cortisol is helpful. It keeps you alert and responsive, but when stress becomes constant, cortisol stays elevated, and over time that can begin to affect the part of your brain responsible for forming and retrieving memories. Instead of supporting your brain, it starts to work against it, almost like a system that's being overused without time to recover. And here's something many people are surprised to learn. Your brain has a built-in cleaning system, but it only works properly when you're in deep, restful sleep. During that time, your brain goes through a kind of reset. It clears out waste, it removes unwanted buildup, and it restores balance for the next day. But if your sleep is interrupted, too light, or not long enough, that cleaning process doesn't fully happen, and over time, that can allow those harmful elements to linger. So now imagine these three factors working together: a gradual buildup inside the brain, ongoing stress that keeps your system under pressure, and sleep that doesn't give your brain enough time to reset. Individually, each one has an effect, but together they can amplify each other, making memory lapses more frequent, more noticeable, and sometimes more concerning. But here's the part that many people never hear. These processes are not completely out of your control. In fact, they are some of the most responsive systems in the body, which means when you begin to support them in the right ways, they can begin to shift, even later in life. And this is where things start to become encouraging, because once you understand what your brain actually needs, you're no longer just reacting to symptoms. You're working with your body, supporting it, strengthening it. Instead of feeling like things are slowly slipping away, you begin to take back a sense of direction. And for many women, this realization becomes a turning point, not because everything changes overnight, but because they begin to see that small, consistent actions can lead to meaningful improvements over time. Now, before we go further, there's something important to understand. For a long time, people believed that once memory started to decline, there wasn't much that could be done, that it was simply part of aging, something to accept. But more recent research is beginning to challenge that idea. Large-scale studies have shown that a significant portion of cognitive decline may be influenced by factors we can actually address, things like sleep quality, stress levels, nutrition, and mental stimulation. In other words, the way we live each day plays a much bigger role than many people realize, and that means there is more possibility here than we've been led to believe. In fact, researchers have found that the brain retains its ability to adapt and form new connections, something known as neuroplasticity, even well into later years, which means your brain is not fixed, it's responsive, it's dynamic, and it's constantly being shaped by what you do and what you don't do. And that leads us to something very real, because behind all of this science, there are real people experiencing these changes, real women who have gone through the uncertainty, the fear, and the questions we've been talking about. And one story in particular may feel very familiar to you. Let's talk about Linda. Linda is 68 years old, a retired elementary school teacher from Asheville, North Carolina, and for most of her life, she was the one everyone relied on. She remembered every birthday, every family story, every small detail that made moments special. She was organized, present, and sharp. But one afternoon, something happened that she couldn't ignore. She was sitting in her car, keys in hand, about to drive to her daughter's house, a route she had taken hundreds of times before, and suddenly she couldn't remember how to get there. She sat still, staring at the dashboard, trying to think, trying to recall something that should have been automatic, but nothing came. Minutes passed, her heart started to race, and eventually, with her voice shaking, she picked up her phone and called her daughter. She said, "I don't know what's wrong, I can't remember the way." Her daughter tried to reassure her, but Linda could hear the concern, and later that evening when the family gathered, something felt different, quieter, more careful. At one point her granddaughter whispered softly, "Is Grandma okay?" And Linda heard it, and in that moment something shifted. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, remembering her own mother and the changes she went through, and for the first time she allowed herself to ask the question she had been avoiding: is this happening to me too? Over the next few weeks things didn't suddenly get worse, but they didn't feel the same either. She began to second-guess herself. She hesitated more. She pulled back from things she used to enjoy like book club, volunteering, and even simple conversations, not because she didn't want to be there, but because she didn't trust herself the way she used to. And that feeling was the hardest part. But then something unexpected happened. During a visit with her doctor, instead of hearing that this was just aging, she heard something different. Her doctor explained that many of these changes can be connected to things like sleep quality, stress levels, and how the brain is being supported over time, that it wasn't just about decline, it was about balance. And that was the first time Linda felt a sense of hope. She started small. She focused on improving her sleep, creating a calm nighttime routine, reducing stimulation before bed. She began simple breathing exercises to manage stress. Nothing complicated, just consistent. And gradually she began to notice subtle changes. She felt more rested in the mornings, more clear during the day, more present in conversations, and most importantly, she began to feel like herself again. Now, something else also caught her attention. As she started learning more about how the brain works, she realized that certain nutrients play a key role in supporting memory, focus, and overall brain function, not as a quick fix, but as part of a supportive routine. So she began looking into natural ways to support her brain, and that's when she came across something interesting, a combination of ingredients that are often associated with memory support and cognitive health. Things like plant extracts traditionally used to support focus, nutrients that help maintain healthy brain function, and compounds linked to better stress balance and sleep quality. What stood out to her wasn't just the ingredients, but how they were combined to support the same systems we talked about earlier: sleep, stress, and overall brain function. Now, this isn't about a miracle solution, and it's not about replacing healthy habits, but for many women, it can be a supportive piece of a bigger picture, something that works alongside lifestyle changes, not instead of them. So, if you're curious, I've left more information about this in the description below. You can take a look, learn more, and decide for yourself if it's something that makes sense for you. No pressure, just something worth exploring. Because the truth is, you've spent a lifetime being there for others, remembering the little things that matter, holding on to the stories that connect your family, and you deserve to keep that, to stay present, to stay confident, to stay connected. And while no one can control everything, there are things you can do, small steps, simple changes, decisions that support your brain over time, and those choices matter more than most people realize. If this message resonated with you and you'd like to keep learning more about how to support your brain, your memory, and your well-being as you age, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what you learn next could make all the difference in how you experience the years ahead.